Hello and welcome to The Green Voice. I'm your host, Grant Ervin with S&B USA, coming to you from the Center for Media Innovation at Point Park University in fabulous downtown Pittsburgh, or as we like to say in Pittsburgh, downtown Pittsburgh. Downtown. Today, I have with me Natalie Hinkle from Koppers. Natalie.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Thanks for having us again.
We are excited to have Koppers, one of the leading companies in Pittsburgh for well over a century. I mean, we'll get into this.
In some iterations,
in
yes.
some iterations. It's just a fabulous piece of Pittsburgh's history, but also Pittsburgh's future, I think. And every time we get a chance to talk to someone from the Koppers team, it's always exciting because you guys are pushing the envelope in so many different ways.
Yeah, great.
And so in both corporate side, sustainability side, and so we hope to kind of dive into that in the next few minutes here.
Good.
But before since you're a first timer here on The Green Voice, I would love if you could just do a little introduction of yourself and, who is Natalie Hinkle and a little of your background and your role at Koppers.
Okay.
So I'd love to learn about you.
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, thanks again for having me, having Koppers on here again. We love supporting. So, so Natalie Hinkle, I am the Director of Environmental and Social Responsibility at Koppers right now. I've been at Koppers for about 7 years.
Nice.
So it's been a while, but it does not feel like that long. It's been really great.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Yes, for sure. And I've had really great jobs there. So I started in the Zero Harm department, which is, how we refer to our safety and environmental programs. So started there supporting our chemical business units. And was, safety and environmental support for them from the corporate level. And then at just about last year, moved into the role in sustainability. So I had been supporting our sustainability program in some way since we started in 2020. But last year I was able to, take on more of a leadership role in it, which has been really exciting and so much fun. So
is your background in safety, like what education, history before Koppers, tell us a little bit about your backstory.
So born and raised in Pittsburgh, from Beaver County.
There you go. Be specific.
Yes, I'm from Hopewell. Nice. So went to Penn State for environmental engineering because in high school I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was good at math and science, and I liked camping. So they were like, why don't you try that? And I'm like, okay, sounds good.
Natural connection.
Yes, and I loved it. So I couldn't imagine myself doing anything else. And I was always interested in sustainability, being outside, conservation programs, ever since I was little. We still have my daughter plays with it right now, a book of leaves that me and my mom collected when we were young. And identified all the trees in the neighborhood. So this is like a very big relic in the family right now. So
how old's your daughter?
She's 4.
Okay. Oh, that's the perfect time.
Yes. So it's the best.
I love 4.
Yeah.
Mine are 12 and 18. So
fun.
4 is like such a prescient, precocious kind of age for kids.
She's like discovering herself, and she just like everything is so exciting to her all the time, and it's like so much fun. So
and she has the book of leaves,
and so she's starting her own book of leaves right now. Yes. So anyways, long story short, after I graduated Penn State, I worked in consulting for a while, environmental compliance consulting, which really gave me such great background into the energy and manufacturing economy in the Pittsburgh area. So I got to work in some mining projects, natural gas projects, steel projects, stuff like that. So that gave me such a great baseline. And then I worked in industry for a while as an environmental and safety manager at a copper mill for a year before I came to Koppers. So copper to Koppers. Yes.
That's a logical transition. Yeah. Here in the Pittsburgh area, or okay.
Yeah.
So coming into this idea of safety, I've always been amazed at the connection between safety and sustainability, particularly in terms of data and metrics, and also culture building.
Yes.
How has that transition been from you from one discipline to the other that has a lot of similarities?
Yeah, for sure. So I was in my career, I was kind of thrown into safety when I started it. So it was really eye-opening coming from the environmental side of things where it's driven by permits and regulations and things like that. And then when I started in a safety role, I'm walking through the plant and these guys are grabbing me like, hey, can you fix this? This thing can cut my finger off. And like, they didn't care like what our emissions were that day. They're like, I don't want this to like hurt me. So that was really eye-opening. And so
the number one goal is to make sure everybody goes home safe every night.
Yeah. And so, you know, being able to kind of track things, and one thing Koppers is really good at is this thing we call leading indicators. So lagging indicators are, you know, somebody got hurt, or we had a property damage incident, or, you know, things along those lines. Leading indicators are the things that we've been doing that we are tracking, where we go out and we call them observations. So we watch someone doing a task and say, hopefully, you know, hey, you did that really well. You were climbing this ladder with 3 points of contact, or, you know, you had all your PPE in the right like place and stuff like that. And it gives us an opportunity to go out and see things and observe these processes and be able to say, hey, you know, maybe you didn't have 3 points of contact, or I think, you know, the way you were bending over looked like maybe that'll hurt your back. Is there another way that we can do this? So we really track a lot of that at Koppers, and it gives us really good data on, you know, what we're doing well and a lot of places where we can improve before we have an incident, you know.
How are you starting to collect some of that?
We have a data management system that we collect all of our environmental and safety data in. And that even rolls into sustainability as well, because we're tracking our water discharges in there. We're tracking, you know, how much natural gas we're using, and we're tracking, you know, and all the environmental and safety metrics too. So
now, being from Beaver County, I want to draw a connection here, because I think it's important for a lot of us from the Pittsburgh area who are in sustainability. And when we were first talking, you were kind of mentioning some of this, but I'd be curious, like, what's your family history and your connection to the community, to the environment? You mentioned your leaf book, but there's more to it, right? Like, do you have a connection to the steel industry?
Yes.
Or
yeah,
what?
it seems like this is a leading question. We were talking about this before. So
leading indicator versus lagging. Okay.
So like I said, you know, born and raised in the Pittsburgh area. And one cool full circle moment was when I came to Koppers. I was interviewing and I was talking to my grandfather about, you know, what this company is and what it does. And he said, you know, my dad worked at J&L Steel on the rail line, you know. So it was, and hearing stories from like my grandfather and my dad worked there. So my father, my grandfather, and my great grandfather all worked in the steel. Actually, my mom worked in the steel industry too.
Okay.
Yeah. She was one of the first women riggers at the steel mill in Johnstown. Yeah.
Wow.
So so we have like a very heavy history in the steel industry. But, you know, even looking at that from the safety side of things, it's so cool to work in this industry now and have safety as being part of my role.
Sure.
You know, in talking to my grandfather about and my dad about the way things were done back then, it's like things you would never do
today. For sure.
Yeah.
A couple of things with that, like, does that make it easier for you to talk to them about your job, like having that sort of connection? Because sustainability and the conversations around it are, I don't like to call it new anymore, because we're generations into this and there's evolution. But I think for a lot of people, like what does that mean? You know, like, what are you talking about? But like, your role with Koppers, are you able to translate to your family about the work? Like, they get it, in quotes.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. And I think, like, you know, back to just take your kid to work day, like with my dad and stuff, and working in these industries, you know, on the plant floor versus when we talk about, you know, steel or heavy industry or anything like that. Like, it's not one of those things that you understand until you've been in it and you lived it. So I think being able to draw those connections with, like, I've been there, I've seen this job done, I know what it takes to, you know, make these changes and make things safer, has really helped me be able to talk about it, you know, within Koppers, outside of Koppers, and things like that.
With your leading and lagging indicators, is that, obviously there's a data culture that you guys have built, which is, I think, really admirable and kind of at the leading edge of things. How much of those indicators are also within conversations with people, in the field, at a manufacturing facility, where you're getting that feedback, right? It's not just a spreadsheet where you're seeing stuff. What are you guys doing to kind of, get that story from the factory floor, so to speak, or, from a customer even, like that type of key stakeholder engagement?
Yeah. So one thing that we're actually doing right now that has been really fun for me is we're working on, drafting our CSR. Everyone's in the thick of CSR season, gathering all the data from
Corporate social responsibility.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. So yeah.
Part of my job is to decode acronyms.
Yes, that's
where I can. Yeah.
I sometimes can go into acronym land.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Do it.
Yeah.
Go for it. We'll see how good I am.
So we've been working on that a lot right now. And so one thing that has been so cool that we've been doing is getting these cool stories and these highlights from the facilities. I talked yesterday to one of our engineers at our plant in Chicago, and he told me about this fantastic water conservation program that they're running.
Wow.
Where they are saving 40 gallons per minute of water from what they used to do. And granted, there were some process changes in there too.
Yeah.
But they really looked at the process and they said, okay, like, how can we do this better? Let's take a step back. And rather than just doing, just keep it moving, same as what we've always been, like, let's take a step back and really look at, like, is this the right way to be doing these things? So they found an opportunity to save, like I said, 46 gallons per minute of water.
That's amazing.
It's astounding. And, that's really translated to, water conservation, energy conservation, saving money and things like that. And so that's been really cool.
What leads to that? Is that this person just saying, hey, I got this great idea? Or is there some sort of a incentive program or general communication where that type of innovation comes to the forefront? Like, how does that originate for you guys?
So there's a lot of things actually that we're doing at Koppers. So I think part of that's definitely built into our culture. We're constantly,
it's a culture of innovation.
Yes, and
continuous improvement is kind of driven into the culture.
Yeah, and we have an innovation department at Koppers. Which has just been so great. They work with the frontline employees to say, like, give us your ideas and let us help you, build them out into something that's going to, be safer, save money, save energy, reduce our waste. So we have a great innovation team that supports that. And also we have kind of a new overarching corporate initiative to, just become more efficient and do things better and not kind of do it how it's always been.
Yeah, you can't be complacent, right?
Yes, yeah.
I think that's one of the things that there is such an intersection between sustainability and innovation and continuous improvement.
Yes, yeah.
And when you see that all click, it's like, oh, that's what I've been talking about. Right?
And to me, it always comes back to this concept of efficiency.
Yeah.
So it's how can we do it better? If we can do it more efficient, if we can run our plants more efficiently, if we can use our heat more efficiently, if we can recycle, it's a win-win-win for everybody across the board. So I think, like, looking for those opportunities, sometimes it's hard, you got to kick a lot of rocks to find these opportunities and look at them. But I think having that, and it's so easy. We've all done it. You go to work, you do your job, you do it the same way the last guy did it, and you go home, It's so easy.
Take your hard hat and your lunch pail. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's so easy to get in that habit. But we really do have, like, a fantastic, engineers at the sites and, production folks at the sites that are constantly looking at how to do things better. So I do think we're very lucky to be able to foster that culture at Koppers.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
You, to dive into some of the nitty gritty, you guys are in your second next iteration of your sustainability strategy. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
And part of that was led because you hit your scope 1 and scope 2 emissions targets. And so for the non-sustainability nerds out there, that's the what you burn, what you buy in terms of, like, your utilities, your fuel.
Yep.
but you crushed those targets.
We did crush it. We indeed crushed it.
And we had Carmuse on here last week, so we were talking about crushing limestone. So I can't think of a Koppers analogy right off the bat, but but you guys were really successful in that strategy.
Yeah.
Now you're in your next iteration. Tell us a little bit about what that process has been like and what you're looking into right now.
Yeah. So you guys had Leslie Hyde on here before, one of our predecessors, which, by the way, I watched her episode, watched a lot of the other episodes before I came on today.
Okay. All right.
Don't sleep on this podcast because it is really good.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
It was so great. We've been listening
It's our
to it
guests.
in the car.
Okay, good guests. Yep.
So that's been really great. But so Leslie came on here and she was talking about, how we kind of determined our first goal. And it was, we had never done it before. So we were kind of figuring it out as we went. And we, looked at the national government emissions reduction targets and just kind of said, well, let's just kind of go on the same trajectory as what they're doing. Kind of like a 2007, 2009 baseline year, 50% reduction by 2030. So we said, let's, our curve actually had kind of matched, what theirs looked like. So we kind of threw that one out and it worked. And, we have had great progress in that area. So now when we sat back down to do the second one, we said, we can't just throw some at the wall and see if it sticks. This has to be rooted in reality. It needs to be something that's achievable, but also something that is aspirational too. We don't want to just throw out a layup and, go from there. So we really looked at what do we want the business to look like?
I like the basketball analogy coming from Beaver County also. That's not lost on me. So keep going.
So we said, where do we want to be? What do we want our company to look like then? And then how do we drop these emissions? And one thing that really stood out to us when we were looking at the data and looking at how we need to track our emissions was we use a lot of wood as fuel at our sites because we make railroad ties.
So waste wood or just wood in general?
So, wood in general. I think Heath was talking about it. Two of our main products are treated railroad ties and treated utility poles.
Yep.
So they come in, not always to the specifications that we need. So we have to cut ends off of them. The poles come in just looking like trees. So we have to debark them and get them to the specs so that they are the right height and width to be used, to be treated and then used as a utility pole. So we have lots of wood byproduct at our facilities. So, some of the sites were using them as fuel. Some of the sites weren't. So we said, we have all this free energy.
Yeah.
And, looking at the greenhouse gas protocol of how you track your Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions. I'll try to explain what the greenhouse gas protocol is.
Be careful. Go ahead.
So we said, we should be really separating this wood out. This is an opportunity for us. It's not a fossil-based fuel. The carbon cycle looks much different if we're burning wood. And the greenhouse gas protocol said, put that in a separate bucket. So we really focused in on, we want to be, we're still going to track our wood emissions, but we really focused in on, all right, we want to be decreasing our fossil-derived emissions.
Sure.
So, natural gas, diesel, things along those lines. So that's...
Particularly if you have this wood byproduct that you could use alongside of it, right?
Yes. Yeah. And it's waste reduction. It's, it's hitting all these great, program areas.
Yeah.
So for our new goal, it's using a 2024 baseline year, reducing Scope 1, which is our on-site, self-generated emissions, and Scope 2, which is the energy that we're buying.
Yep.
Reducing Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions 20% by 2030.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's already
and
down.
Fossil-related fuel, non-biogenic.
So that's all. And what's that compounded, I'm going to call it, or cumulative of what you reduced already?
I think it's around 60%, give or take, from where we have been in 2007.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
well, just ballparking, ballparking over in a 20-year period, basically, you've been able to reduce that emissions, also tightening up your supply chain, I'm presuming, because you already have that wood byproduct. What's that look like from a financial, I don't need numbers, but from a financial standpoint, there's a business case to be made there, I presume.
Oh, by using wood as fuel?
Right.
Oh, yeah, for sure. We're not paying to And we're saving emissions. We're not trucking it out. We're not sending it to the landfill. We're
Right.
not, we're not bringing new fuel into the facility. We're not trucking that fuel in. So it hits so many boxes to.
That is really terrific.
Yeah.
Now, when you come up with an innovation like that or a process like that, who's touching the ball on that? Like, do you have, obviously your team is kind of working on that. Then there's like an operations component, finance. Do they find their way into that fold? Like, when you make a decision to use a wood byproduct at a plant, like, what's that look like?
Yeah. So, some of the sites we may need to invest in to, either
Capital cost of some sort.
for new boilers, if they don't have one, or if they have a boiler, do we have capacity to be doing it this way? So certainly, like, touching on the capital program, touching on, we call them the zero harm coordinators, which are our safety and environmental specialists at the sites. The corporate zero harm team is also helping to look for outlets for this wood.
Yeah.
And same thing with like the supply chain folks. They're helping.
So everybody's a part of the process.
Yeah, we have a really great team that, sustainability is one of our, core tenets at Koppers. So I never have any issues when I'm reaching out to folks about, hey, we're looking at this project. Can you give me the background information? Or, hey, I need your data for scope 1 and scope 2 or scope 3 or whatever.
Is everybody excited? Like, hey, Natalie's on the phone.
Oh,
right?
yeah, it's a little better now, I think, than when I was in my previous position. So
Because you're reporting on stuff that is progress generating, right?
Yeah, and it's like the CSR is like all the great things that we did last year and reporting out on the progress of all the stuff that we did. So it's very positive. So
I don't want to lose a thread about scope 3 emissions in a second, so we'll go there.
Yeah.
But you mentioned CSR. Like, what are some of those things that the non-environmental components that you're working on at Koppers? Like, what is engagement within the community or different stakeholder groups, or like, what are some of the things that are front and center for you right now?
Yeah, so our sustainability program, they've always done a really good job of making sure that it's not just focused on what are our emissions. Like Koppers has always done a great job of like, the sustainability program is this big umbrella that covers people, planet, and performance.
Yep.
So, we have new goals in our new strategy around like the people side of things. So making sure that we're preparing the workforce of the future, we're investing in our own team, we're keeping people safe, we're making sure that they're well at work and at home. So that's a great
like a
aspect.
mental health aspect of things.
Yeah. So, and like holistic wellness, so we're doing that. We one of our new initiatives is working on a sustainable procurement program with EcoVadis. That has been really, really interesting so far. So assessing our suppliers for sustainability risks. And also EcoVadis, can I just plug real fast?
Sure.
We got our new badge and we are a silver medal. So
Congratulations.
Top 15% of rated companies. So we moved up from bronze to silver. So we're really, really excited about that too.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So that's been great. And then, obviously looking at climate and energy and looking at product safety too.
With a lot of that underneath, and I was on my way over to the studio today, I was listening to something and the issue of risk management came up. Are you getting into that conversation a lot from the sustainability, corporate social responsibility lens? Like, are you a part of risk management conversations?
So luckily at Koppers, we all report to the same person.
Okay.
So Heath has
oversees
always overseen, well, not always, but has overseen risk for a while. So,
which I wish I had like the episode number, but like we can
just Google it.
Yeah, Google it.
So that's been really cool for me to see too, because a big part of our sustainability program is assessing our climate risk.
Right.
So do we have risk to our supply chain of, as there are more severe weather events, as climate change, worsens? Are we going to have risks of getting our products, and are we going to have physical risks at our facilities? So that's one thing that we worked on a lot last year, but that's something that we're continuing to work on to refine our climate risk analysis, and look at like where do we have risks that we see and how do we mitigate those. So that's been a great connection, and especially having that all in the same department is
it's super helpful.
best case scenario.
Because for you, like forest products, for example, could be a risk, right? But that supply chain component, I mean, that is like the big piece of the conversation right now. Whereas like, how are we, tightening our, I mean, we learned this through the pandemic, but like, there's always these supply chain shocks that percolate, and everybody's like, I never knew. But that's not the case if you're watching the road, right?
Yeah.
At least you can have some leading indicators of where those risks might be and how you might mitigate them, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And so not even just with climate, with, human rights, things like that. So we want to make sure that we're assessing our supply chain and we're, buying from the most responsible and most sustainable places where we can.
Yeah, that's super important. Well, that leads me into one of my final questions is like around the Scope 3 emission piece, like which is very supply chain and can be very supply chain dependent.
Yes.
What are some things that you guys at Koppers are looking into right now to both build the data, but then also, what do you do about it? Like, just like how you've been able to address really proactively the Scope 1 and Scope 2, what are some of the initial indications you see around Scope 3 data collection, but also like, what are some of the actions that you could take going forward?
Yeah, so we're heavy into the collection piece right now. And as I'm sure anyone who touches Scope 3 data knows, it's a bear.
It's the iceberg,
It
right?
is, It's underneath. Yeah, it's the bottom of it. It's what's going to sink the Titanic.
Yeah. It's like the guys at the front of the bow. They're like, iceberg,
Help.
Yeah.
We need your transportation data.
Right. Yeah. You're sitting there. You're like, Scope 3 emissions, Captain. So.
Yeah. So just doing all that data gathering right now has, and it touches every portion of the company, but also we're vertically integrated too.
Okay.
So when we're looking at Scope 3, we're like, okay, well, this piece is Scope 3, but then it comes into the facility and then it goes to another facility. So are we transporting it to that facility? Is a third party transferring? So
you're managing transportation logistics internally too, then?
In some business units.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So just getting our hands around that has been a major endeavor, even to the point where I first started talking about it. People were like, what are you, we can't do this.
Yeah.
So it's been huge. And I think we're still, it's constant refinement of that data, so we're still looking at that. And then, we're working towards reporting them externally for the first time in this CSR. Will be the first one that we include Scope 3 data. So
that's a big moment.
It's, hopefully.
Yeah.
So that's the plan. So we're looking at doing that this year, as long as everything goes according to plan. And then, so I think like once we are able to kind of clear that hurdle, then we can really start looking at it and say, okay, now that we have this data, we have a good understanding of where this stuff is going, where everything, how can we make improvements in that? How can we ship better? How can we, move between the plants better? How, can we buy better? It's really, there's a ton of opportunity. I think even just the first step of that is understanding where your biggest impacts are, because each company is going to have a different Scope 3 footprint. Consulting, you might be, employee commuting might be your biggest bucket.
Air travel.
Yeah. But for us, that's like a major that's a tiny drop in the bucket compared to, end of life of our products or getting our products to where we.
Are you looking across the whole spectrum, or are you just focusing in on kind of the big 3 to 5,
We do the whole thing, all categories that are applicable to us. We gather data on. So
how, one of the things that I think is amazing about this too is that the amount of data and internal business intelligence you're generating is massive, right?
Yeah.
How does it, in your mind, kind of trickle up into business strategy?
Yeah. So I think that was a huge connector when, Heath came into his role and I came into my role, and we were looking at what each of us bring to
from
this
safety,
puzzle.
from risk management.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, we even have another girl in our department who's like our, the data whiz. You know? So, when all of us kind of came together, we were like, okay, well, you have this piece of the puzzle and I have this piece of the puzzle. And then how do we fit all this stuff together to come up with, something that we can use to drive or present to, really drive improvements or, and scope 3 touches everything. So we're working with internal audit, we're working with IT, we're working with engineering, we're working with transportation, we're working with procurement. So it's, being able to gather all that data together is so valuable to have it, and then to be able to speak to it and say, all right, this is where we see opportunity.
Yeah, like here's some insights that we're able to derive from this information.
Yeah.
Just as we kind of close here, I'm curious, given that information that you're starting to gather, was one of the kind of ways I always like to wrap up the conversation. Like, what do you, knowing what you know now, where are you looking to go? Like, what are some of the things that, with the information, whether it's a new strategy and kind of the frontier now of a new emissions target or these scope 3, like what kind of, gets you excited about some of the things that are up ahead for you and for Koppers? Yeah.
So I think, we have this great strategy built. So there's a lot of exciting elements to that. I think one of the things that we're working on that's going to be really valuable is these EPDs and
environmental product declarations.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I thought that was a test, and it was clearly. So, okay.
I didn't mean for it to be. And looking into those and determining like what is the carbon footprint of these products and getting much better data on them, because I think that's definitely helped us to see like, can we do things more efficiently? And like I said, bringing it back to that efficiency is like the name of the game, like comparing, because we have a lot of different plants that all make railroad ties.
Sure.
So we're looking at this data across the board, and it's like, well, is this one's doing a little better than this in this area? Is there anything that we can look at there? And kind of the goal would be to bring that back to operations and say, here's the data. Is there anything that, is interesting to you?
I would presume that you have utility rail clients who would love that information.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And then also, like, at the end of the day, you're building a better product, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And we're a global company. So we have a footprint in the EU. We have a footprint in Australia. They are way ahead of us on these things. So they're working on these EPDs. And they're like, can you guys come along for the ride, please? So they're really leading the charge. So, and clients are asking for it, like our customers want to know these things now. And it's even, I think there's a regulation in the EU.
Yes.
If it's a construction material, well, you would know this better than me.
Yeah. It's in the European Union, there's kind of a declaration of all the materials that are input into a product. Yeah.
Yeah.
And just for clarification for folks, it's basically like if you were to read the label of a food product at the grocery store, that's what an EPD is, right?
Yeah.
I think that is just some fascinating stuff, and it's great to see that a Pittsburgh company is at the leading edge of that.
Yeah. It's going to be cool.
Natalie, thank you so much. Thank you for all the great work that you do.
Thank you.
And thank you to you and the team at Koppers for joining us here today on the Green Voice podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been great, and we appreciate all the work that you guys are doing too. So
awesome. Well, we hope to have you back soon.
Thank you.
Excellent. And thank you all for listening in to the Green Voice. We want to thank Natalie and the team at Koppers for joining us today. Thanks, Tanner, and the team here at Point Park University for being great hosts and keeping us on time and on track. I'm Grant Ervin with S&B USA Construction. Thanks for listening in, and we will check you out at the next episode. Be well and be safe.